She texted at 10:17 p.m. Don't wait up. Crashing at Mark's. Maybe next time you'll listen. That was it. No context, no signature, no explanation. Just her spending the night at another man's house to punish me for not attending therapy. The screen glowed in my hand like a slow-burning fuse. I read it 3 times before the meaning really took hold, and even then, my brain kept trying to reinterpret it into something softer. Maybe she meant his guest room. Maybe it was a group hangout. Maybe this was just another melodramatic swing in a long pattern of emotional chess. But I knew better. The weapon wasn't just where she stayed. It was the performance of it. The cold, precise choice of words. The deliberate cruelty. She said Mark, the way someone says. Proof. The one name I'd quietly asked her about 6 months ago, and again 3 weeks ago. Her platonic friend, with a gym membership and perfect teeth, the guy who called her sis in public and queen in his Instagram comments. She'd scoffed at my concern both times, said I was being paranoid, jealous, insecure. And now here she was, nesting under his roof, not as a secret, but as a punishment. Her words weren't a slip, they were a message. She wasn't just staying there. She wanted me to know she was staying there. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't ask if she was serious. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the framed photo from last Thanksgiving, her hand on my chest, my arm around her waist. We looked like a team in that picture. We looked happy. And maybe we were, for brief moments, but they were the kind of moments that dissolve on contact with truth, like fog burned off by daylight. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat with the text open, cycling through questions I couldn't ask and answers I didn't want to hear. At 3:15 a.m., I drafted a message. Let me know when you're home safe. I deleted it. She wasn't in danger. She was making a point. The next morning, the house was silent. No coffee brewing, no soft footsteps on the hardwood. Just the echo of my own thoughts, louder than ever. I made myself eggs, oversalted them, didn't eat them. I sat with the silence and tried to name what I felt. Not rage. Not grief. Not yet. It was the sensation of a page turning without your permission. A chapter beginning where you didn't plan to write one. Something had shifted. Not because of one night, but because of what that night represented. She wanted power, and she knew the most efficient way to take it was to make me doubt mine. I didn't reach out again. I didn't ask where she was the next night, or the night after. I acted like I didn't care, but I did, and I was going to find out just how far she'd taken it, quietly, carefully. Because one thing I knew for sure, you don't declare war with a text unless you're sure the other side won't fire back. She made that gamble, and I was done folding. By the third night, it became clear this wasn't about space, it was about staging. She hadn't just walked out to breathe. She'd left the house like an actor stepping into costume. I saw it in the Instagram posts. Not hers, of course. She was smarter than that. But her orbit was leaky. Mutuals with loose filters, friends who tag locations without thinking, casual uploads meant to be private but never quite were. I didn't need to look far. One of her coworkers posted a boomerang of wine glasses clinking. I paused it, studied the background. Same bookshelf I'd seen in Mark's stories a few months back, the one with the neon sign that read, Vibes. 2 glasses, 1 couch, no crowd. She was performing solitude with him in the audience. Or maybe he was the co-star. Either way, this wasn't retreat. It was exhibition. Then came the caption that turned my stomach. Girl nights toxic fights #healing. She wasn't in the shot, but her friend tagged her. I clicked. The video was still up, just a 7-second loop, but enough to catch her voice laughing off-screen. Enough to see Mark's bare feet on the ottoman. Pajamas. Candles. Low light. Not a therapy session. Not a friend's shoulder. A wine date disguised as self-care. I didn't screenshot it. Not yet. I just watched it, once, twice, then a third time. Let it sear. Let it settle. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was carefully arranged. Plausible deniability stacked like dominoes. Sleepovers for mental health. Hashtags for credibility. Silence from me was being framed as evidence of guilt. I started noticing the patterns. She wasn't just avoiding me. She was narrating the absence. Telling a story to anyone who would listen, one where she was the brave, exhausted woman surviving an emotionally distant partner. The misunderstood heroine who had to sleep somewhere else because her needs weren't being heard. She even updated her Facebook cover photo. A quote, White script on a sunset. Sometimes the hardest thing is walking away from chaos and choosing peace. The comments poured in. You deserve better. Proud of you. Let us know if you need anything, sis. No one asked what the chaos was. No one asked if it existed at all. I didn't reply. Not to her, not to them. I let the silence accumulate, because I wasn't going to interrupt her play mid-scene. I was going to watch how far she took the role, how many people she pulled into it. And quietly, behind the curtain, I started writing my own version. I backed up our joint financial records, started a private drive, pulled copies of text threads, calendar invites, and digital receipts. Not just hers, mine too. I knew what was coming. You don't broadcast boundaries unless you're rehearsing a script. And this one had already started hinting at a villain. She wasn't running from me. She was building a case. And somewhere beneath that calm exterior, behind those social justice captions and curated candles, she believed I wouldn't fight back. She thought she could win this through narrative. She forgot I deal in facts. It was a Thursday afternoon when the mask slipped. I was in the office, half listening to a budget meeting, when my phone buzzed 3 times, same sender. My buddy Dylan, never one for drama, had sent a screenshot, a short message, and then another screenshot. That alone made me excuse myself. The first image hit like a cold splash. It was her, leaning against the kitchen island. Not our kitchen, I'd know that backsplash anywhere. It was Mark's. She was in pajama shorts, oversized hoodie, a wine glass raised in mock cheers. He was standing behind her, slightly out of focus, but unmistakably present. 2 wine glasses, a lit candle, no crowd, and the caption from her friend, not even a close one, read, "Love nights like this. Just peace, laughter, and real ones at Emily_A. Emily, my wife." Tagged, smiling, staying there clearly. The timestamp? Midnight 2 nights ago. Dylan's message followed. Just 6 words. "Thought you said it was platonic?" He wasn't mocking. He was giving me the out, the plausible chance to say, "It's nothing." But I couldn't. Not anymore. The second screenshot showed comments. "You two are the cutest. Low-key obsessed with this energy. Finally surrounded by people who get you." People didn't think they were roommates. They didn't think this was some post-fight crash pad. The tone had shifted. The script was moving without me. She wasn't just sleeping somewhere else now. She was auditioning a replacement. Maybe not officially. Maybe not out loud. But emotionally, visually, socially, it was already happening. I stared at the photos for a long minute. Then I scrolled through her page again. Nothing there. Of course not. She was too careful. She never posted the fire. She let the smoke speak for itself. That night, I noticed the locks had been changed. Subtle. Clean. The key I'd used for 6 years didn't click anymore. No note. No warning. I didn't knock. I didn't text. I drove back to my condo downtown, the one I'd kept rented as a workspace. I slept there for the first time in months. The sheets were cold, the air thin with dust. But I didn't feel exiled. I felt braced. The next morning, a calendar invite appeared in my inbox. Mediation, a trial separation discussion. It read. Location Zoom. Initiated by her. I laughed once, short and bitter. Trial separation? There hadn't been a trial. Just a sentencing. Locks, captions, wine nights, now a calendar invite. She hadn't spoken a word to me in 5 days, but she was arranging the aftermath, and she still hadn't told me the truth. I declined the invite. Then I called my lawyer. Not to fight. To prepare. Because one thing was clear, she wasn't reacting to our problems. She was orchestrating the ending, framing the picture so she could look strong, centered, victorious. She wanted to be the one who walked away. But I was about to make sure she wasn't walking on clean ground. I didn't go digging for Mark. He came to me, indirectly, casually, through someone who didn't even know they were holding the match. Over coffee with a mutual friend, Jason, I mentioned the situation in passing. Not the betrayal, just the separation, the silence, the social spiral. Jason raised an eyebrow and nodded slowly. "Well," he said, taking a sip, "I guess it was only a matter of time before she and Mark made it official." I didn't move. I didn't blink. Just kept my face neutral and let the words hang there. He frowned at my silence. "Wait, you knew about them back in the day, right?" Back in the day. I held my breath. "What do you mean?" Jason looked confused now, like he'd stepped into a conversation already in motion. "Dude, they dated. Briefly. Like years before you guys got serious. I thought she told you. She didn't. That was all I said. My voice was flat, not angry. That came later. In the moment, I was just cataloging the data point. He looked uncomfortable now. I mean, it wasn't deep. They stayed close after. But I figured it was one of those things you two were just cool about. I nodded slowly. Yeah, cool. I left 20 minutes later, half of my coffee untouched, half of my assumptions shredded. She hadn't just crashed at Mark's. She'd returned to a backup plan. Not a stranger. Not a safe place. A former flame she'd never fully extinguished, and never disclosed. She let me walk into a relationship thinking this man was a neutral figure in her life. A brother, she'd once called him. She didn't lie about him. She just omitted everything that mattered. And that was worse. I sat in my car outside the cafe for a long time. No music. Just the sound of traffic and 1,000 memories rearranging themselves in my head. The way she used to pause when his name came up. The private messages I'd glanced past. The way she lit up when he laughed at her stories in group settings. At the time, I thought I was being paranoid. Now I knew better. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. She'd been writing this version of her life before I even knew the first draft was finished. And now, she was testing it publicly. Sleepovers, wine posts, passive-aggressive memes. But the part that cracked something in me wasn't her closeness with Mark. It was that she knew not to tell me who he really was. She knew that if I'd known their history, I would have never accepted the friendship. So she staged it as innocent from the start, planted it deep enough that when I finally questioned it, I'd look like the paranoid husband trying to police her friends. She built the trap, then waited for me to walk into it. I didn't respond to her mediation invite. I didn't call her out. I didn't show up at Mark's or send a single message. But I moved every shared financial asset into protected status. I transferred the deed on the condo back into my sole name. I had the utilities cut at the main house, legally, with notice. Everything I did was clean, quiet, documented. Because now, I wasn't trying to salvage anything. I was building the exit ramp, and I wanted it paved before she even realized I was already halfway gone. I waited until she was home. Not just back at the house, home, where she had to sit with her choices, not hide behind girl nights and Mark's guest room. The locks had been changed, yes, but legally the house was still in both our names, and when her lawyer finally reached out, too late, I made sure my access was restored before the mediation window expired. She didn't expect me to show, but she should have. The timing had to be perfect. I wasn't going to confront her with suspicions or half-formed accusations. I needed something real. Something she couldn't dismiss or spin. I got it from someone I never expected. Erica, a former coworker of hers. We'd never been close. Just polite hellos at events, harmless small talk. But she messaged me late one night. I don't want to get in the middle, she wrote. But you should hear this. Attached was a 9-second audio clip. No context. No explanation. I hit play. It was Emily's voice, soft, confident, just amused enough to burn. He won't leave. He needs me too much. Laughter followed. Mark's, I assumed. Then a clink of glasses. The file ended there. I stared at my screen for a long time, heart thudding. Not because of what she said, I'd heard worse, but because of what it meant. She wasn't unsure. She wasn't conflicted. She was mocking my silence, confident that I would never walk away, never retaliate. She thought she still held the power. I saved the clip, backed it up in 3 places. Then I drove to the house. She was in the kitchen when I arrived. Her expression tightened when she saw me, not surprised, just annoyed. Like I was a forgotten task returning to interrupt her evening. I didn't invite you, she said, arms crossed, stance stiff. I walked past her without a word and placed her phone on the table. Unlock it, I said quietly. She gave a sarcastic laugh. Excuse me? You're going to want to hear this. I tapped the screen, pulled up the clip, hit play. Her voice filled the space, followed by that smug little laugh. I didn't watch her. I watched the reflection in the microwave door behind her. I saw the exact second her composure broke. She tried to recover. That was taken out of context. I slid the condo keys across the table toward her. You were half right, I said calmly. She stared at the keys. Her lips parted, then closed again. No yelling? She finally asked. No dramatic speech? No, I said, turning to leave. You've done enough theater for both of us. She followed me to the doorway, but I didn't stop. Her voice chased me down the steps, suddenly sharp. This doesn't mean you win. I paused at the bottom, looked back once. It means I'm done playing. And I meant it. There was nothing left to salvage. Not because of Mark, or the posts, or the audio, but because of the quiet, deliberate cruelty, the way she used me as a prop in her performance, the way she made sure the world saw her pain but not the damage she inflicted. She didn't want healing. She wanted applause. And I wasn't going to be in the audience anymore. She didn't respond right away. Not after the clip, not after the keys, not even after I filed. But I saw the fallout unfold without a word from her. Screenshots started circulating, not from me. I hadn't leaked anything. I didn't need to. People connected dots on their own. That's the problem with staged performances. Eventually, someone spots the set pieces. The captions didn't match the timelines. The self-care nights overlapped too neatly with Mark's tagged posts. Friends who had reposted her sunset quotes and cheered on her bravery suddenly went quiet. A few reached out to me, carefully. One with a single message. I had no idea. Another with, we supported her because she said you were emotionally unstable. Emotionally unstable. I let that one sit for a while. I didn't fight it. Didn't correct them. Just forwarded the legal notice. Dissolution proceedings initiated. Petition for equitable division of property. Primary residence to be sold or refinanced. She had to read that document in full. Not a text. Not a voicemail. Paper. Signed. Filed. Reality doesn't care about narratives. The next time I heard about Mark, it wasn't from her. It was through a colleague of his, another accidental source. Word was, he stopped showing up to shared events, went silent online, unfollowed her. Apparently, once legal terms entered the chat, Mark vanished like a ghost in a blackout. Because emotional arsonists don't stick around when the fire's under legal inspection. Meanwhile, her friends, the ones who liked her posts, echoed her healing lines, stopped picking sides. Not because they picked mine. They just stepped back. When the drama loses its central character, the crowd thins. Especially when no one wants to admit they clapped for the wrong monologue. One of them texted me quietly. If I'd known, I wouldn't have. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I was reclaiming space. And not just legal or financial. Emotional space. I pulled my name from every shared account, cancelled every shared subscription, scrubbed my digital footprint clean. She didn't even notice until months later when her Spotify stopped working and the Hulu login failed. That's the kind of silence I wanted. Not angry, not vindictive, just final. She staged a campaign. I wrote a closure. And without me in the story, her version lost traction. People stopped choosing between us. They simply stopped listening. There was a time I would have done anything to save the marriage. Therapy. Compromise. Silence. I had convinced myself that endurance was the mark of love. That if I held the line long enough, she'd eventually meet me in the middle. That love, or at least partnership, would win out over ego, over distance, over Mark. But I'd misunderstood the battlefield. This wasn't a fight to be won. It was a play to exit, cleanly, smartly, without letting her burn the set down on her way out. So I did what she never expected. I moved first, filed, reclaimed the deed to the condo. It had always been under my name, but I made sure the language left no ambiguity. Locked down our shared financial platforms. The lawyer called it protective positioning. I called it a necessary firewall. I even reached out to the HOA about the main house. Gave formal notice that any sale or refinancing would require my direct approval. No backdoor moves. No impulsive decisions on her part. She'd have to come to the table, and this time, on my terms. And the friend groups? I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just vanished. Muted chats. Left group threads. No announcements, no final messages. Because if someone needed an explanation after the screenshots, the clipped audio, the silence that followed, they weren't worth keeping anyway. The best thing I did for myself wasn't revenge. It was subtraction. For weeks, she didn't respond. Not to the lawyer. Not to me. She tried freezing me out, like it was still about emotional punishment. But that strategy doesn't work on someone who's already packed. Then, finally, a message came. One line. So this is how it ends? No punctuation. No apology. I didn't reply. Because by the time she asked that question, it had already ended. It didn't end with the wine glass or the locks or the smirk behind the audio clip. It ended the moment she decided her power depended on making me powerless. I didn't burn her publicly. I didn't retaliate. I just removed myself from the equation entirely. And without someone to blame, without someone to outmaneuver, her whole narrative collapsed under its own weight. She thought I needed her too much to leave, but she never realized I was willing to lose her 100 times before I lost myself once. There's a strange kind of clarity that follows betrayal, not immediately, but after the anger burns down to embers. What's left isn't confusion, it's focus. People assumed I'd retaliate, that I'd go online, expose her, tear into Mark. But why? Let the fire reveal itself. I had no interest in telling the world what it would eventually see on its own. I let her post stand, let the silence expand around her like fog with no edges. And slowly, the story started to change, not because I rewrote it, but because she lost the plot. Without a villain to play off of, her performance fell flat. No pushback, no defiance, just me gone. She couldn't paint me as controlling if I didn't try to stop her. She couldn't call me cruel if I never raised my voice. She couldn't claim abandonment when I was the one she locked out. And when she filed a request for temporary control over the house, for her safety, the response from my lawyer was surgical. Documented text records, proof of my lease elsewhere, financial transfers made before any escalation, her own posts timestamped, marked, public, her case folded before it began. The court didn't assign blame. They didn't have to. They just saw the sequence for what it was, an attempt to pre-write a victim narrative. And that's the thing about silence. It doesn't scream innocence, but it invites scrutiny. Her supporters dwindled, not overnight, but steadily. The ones who'd messaged her with, "You're so strong," stopped liking her posts. A few unfollowed altogether. Mark? He disappeared the second a legal inquiry landed near his inbox. He didn't answer her calls, didn't show up in her comments. The man she used as her emotional crutch ghosted the minute it stopped being flattering. It wasn't dramatic. It was just absence. I didn't revel in it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. And every time I sat in that condo, quiet, no echo of slammed doors or snide remarks, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not yet. But clean. I started rebuilding from the ground up. Not chasing new companionship, not proving anything. Just stabilizing. I met with my financial advisor. I started working late again, not to escape, but because it felt like purpose. My sleep returned in broken waves, but at least they were mine. And every so often, I'd see a mutual friend's post, her name tagged, her face smiling but slightly stiff, and I'd feel nothing. No anger, no sadness, just confirmation. That peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from earning your exit, and I had. Every step of it. She sent the last message on a Thursday. No build-up, no preamble. Just a snapshot of a lamp I'd left behind in the house and a question. "Do you want this?" I stared at it for a while. Not because I wanted the lamp. I didn't. But because it was the first real moment of smallness I'd seen from her in months. No passive-aggressive tone. No hashtag wisdom. Just a piece of furniture, and the quiet question of whether it still mattered. I didn't answer. Because she already knew. That lamp had sat in our hallway for years. She used to complain it was too industrial, too cold. I kept it because it was mine before us. A little piece of who I was before compromise rewrote everything in beige. She hated it, but never got rid of it. Now she was asking if I wanted it back. It wasn't about the lamp. It was about control. Even in her collapse, she wanted to negotiate the terms of absence. That's the thing about people who mistake attention for connection. When the stage clears, they don't know how to just exit. They fumble. They cling. They try to invent new reasons to be relevant. But I was finished inventing reasons to explain her. The truth was simpler than any caption she'd written. She needed an audience. I needed peace. Her social circle had thinned to a tight, awkward cluster. The last of her inner circle started responding to me, quietly, a like here, a nod there. No one said it out loud, but they understood now. Or at least they stopped pretending not to. Mark never reappeared. Not in posts. Not in mentions. He became what he'd always been to her, a mirror she used to reflect the version of herself she wanted others to see. But mirrors crack when the light changes. She'd spent months building a version of me that never existed. Cold, dismissive, controlling. And when I stepped away, no drama, No raised voice, no public battle. She lost the scaffolding. The silence was no longer evidence of guilt. It became the absence of chaos. There were still echoes. Legal procedures. Property divisions. Financial cleanup. But the emotional war? That was over. Not because she surrendered, but because I no longer cared to win. And that's how you reclaim your name. Not by shouting it over the noise, but by walking into places where the noise no longer reaches. She wanted the last word, so I gave her the silence it would echo in. There was no final confrontation, no begging. No. I made a mistake. She tried briefly to pivot, to reframe it all as a misunderstanding. A miscommunication. She called it once in a voicemail I didn't answer. Said we'd both handled things poorly. It was damage control, not remorse. She didn't miss me. She missed the control. And when I didn't feed it, when I didn't respond, didn't take the bait, she ran out of lines. The last mutual friend who still tried to sit on the fence sent me a message I won't forget. 4 words. I think she's lost. Not angry. Not judgmental. Just resigned. I didn't respond to that either. I was done playing interpreter for her emotional gymnastics. I saw her once, months later, across the room at a gallery opening we both got invited to by accident. She looked fine, hairstyled, posture strong, smile at the ready. But no one was really around her. She was alone, not because she had been exposed or shamed, but because her version of reality had simply stopped resonating. People weren't angry. They were just exhausted. Even Mark's name was a ghost by then. He'd moved cities, according to someone, quietly. No posts. No public goodbye. She noticed me across the room. Held my gaze for a beat too long. A flicker of something passed. Maybe curiosity, maybe regret. But I didn't give it anything to grip. I nodded once. Just acknowledgement. Then turned away and kept walking. Because I didn't owe her closure. She'd staged her departure as a statement. Tried to script my reaction. Tried to pull me into a story where she got to play survivor and I got cast as the storm. But storms don't retreat. They pass. And when they do, they don't leave behind explanations, just clarity. She built an exit that was all about spectacle. I took mine with nothing but the clothes I carried and the keys I left behind. Because when the curtains fall and the lights go down, it's not the loudest actor who wins. It's the one who walks off stage with dignity intact. After it all settled, the paperwork, the silence, the damage, I expected grief. I expected the emptiness of a house that no longer felt like mine, echoes of conversations that used to mean something. But what I got was something stranger, quieter, and far more real. Relief. Not the kind that makes you smile. The kind that just lets you breathe. It came in strange moments. Walking barefoot through my condo without thinking about whether I'd left crumbs. Watching a movie without commentary. Logging into my bank account without surprises. Small freedoms. I realized how much of myself had been compressed to make space for her moods, her silences, her theater. I wasn't a man in a marriage. I was a man under review, constantly adjusting to avoid triggering the next scene. Now, I was nobody's trigger. And in that emptiness, I started remembering who I used to be. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in slow, subtle pieces. I picked up books I hadn't finished in years, started running again, not for a goal, just for movement. Reconnected with old friends, one conversation at a time, no explanations needed. Some asked what happened. I gave them the shortest version that mattered. We outgrew honesty. They understood. She, meanwhile, tried to float back into a few shared spaces. I heard about it through the grapevine. But without the spotlight, her performance lacked gravity. People nodded, smiled, then went back to their lives. You can only spin so many stories before people stop listening. I didn't watch her unravel. That wasn't my role anymore. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance, and now I had it. But I also had something else. A life that wasn't built around constant emotional negotiation. No more decoding tone. No more managing perception. Just truth. Even when it was ugly. Especially when it was ugly. Because I'd learned something in the silence. Peace isn't quiet because there's nothing happening. It's quiet because nothing false is. And I'd take that kind of quiet every day, forever.